Stop being dramatic about a minor procedure. That was my father's diagnosis before any doctor saw my scans. My name is Nadia Kellerman, 34 years old, born and raised in Milwaukee. I work as a project coordinator for a small arts nonprofit. Steady, quiet work that keeps the lights on and the noise away. I'm the kind of person who apologizes when someone bumps into me, who writes thank you cards even for pity invitations. For months, a sharp, twisting pain had been growing in my abdomen. It came like a tide, unpredictable, brutal, leaving me doubled over in my office bathroom. I lost 12 pounds without trying. Food turned metallic in my mouth. At night, I pressed a heating pad to my stomach until the smell of burnt fabric filled the room. Dad said it was stress. He said that word the way some people say imaginary. Gerald Kellerman, operations manager at St. Agnes Medical Center, lived by schedules, metrics, quarterly goals. Illness didn't fit neatly in his spreadsheets. At dinner one Sunday, when I told him I couldn't keep food down, he didn't even look up from his tablet. You're 34, not 84. Take some antacids and stop over-analyzing everything. Elaine, his wife, sighed dramatically and reached for the wine. Your father has a big month coming. Let's not turn every stomachache into a crisis. Lucas, my half-brother, smirked over his phone. You love attention? Nad, remember the migraine during my graduation I left before dessert, clutching the edge of the counter until the room stopped spinning? 2 days later, I collapsed beside the copy machine at work. My boss called an ambulance. When the paramedics asked where to take me, I whispered, St. Agnes, my father's hospital. The fluorescent lights in the imaging wing hummed louder than the monitors. I lay still while the CT scanner circled above me, the dye burning through my veins like fire. The technician told me to hold my breath. I'd been doing that for months. Hours later, I was in a small consultation room with paper-thin walls when Dr. Marisol Vega walked in. She was in her 40s, her dark hair pulled back, her expression calm but unflinching, the kind of presence that makes you sit up straighter even when you can barely breathe. She introduced herself as Chief of Surgical Oncology at St. Agnes and closed the door softly behind her. Nadia, she said, sliding the scans onto the light board. This isn't simple inflammation or stress. You have a large, complex ovarian mass. It's 10 centimeters likely malignant. We need to operate as soon as possible. The words landed like a physical blow. I watched the glowing image of my own body, its shadows and borders, and realized that whatever had been eating away at me now had a name. She explained the risks, the hours of surgery, the possible loss of reproductive organs. I nodded mechanically, focusing on the small crack in the tile floor instead of the word cancer. When she asked who to contact for family consent, I hesitated. My father works here, I said quietly. Gerald Kellerman. Her pen paused midair. Kellerman, she repeated, almost under her breath. He's on the operations board. I nodded. He thinks it's nothing. He said I'm being dramatic. Something changed in her eyes, a flash of recognition, then restrained anger. She didn't speak for a moment, only wrote something carefully in my chart. I'll make sure you're scheduled immediately, she said finally. And, Nadia, you'll have support here, whether or not it comes from family. For the first time in weeks, someone believed me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone vibrating on the nightstand. My father's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated before answering. Your stepmother tells me you finally saw someone, he began. What's the verdict? I told him everything about Dr. Vega, the scans, the surgery. There was a pause, then the familiar sound of him exhaling disappointment. So, it's a cyst, he said. They remove those all the time. Outpatient procedure. Right. You'll be home by the next day. It's major surgery. Dad, Dr. Vega said 5 or 6 hours, maybe longer. Well, he said, his tone shifting to irritation. That's terrible timing. The gala's Saturday. I can't move the event, obviously, but you can manage a few hours. Can't you? Just for the family photo. I pressed the phone to my ear, stunned. "I'll be 2 days out of surgery." He chuckled as if I were overreacting. "You're tougher than you think. You've always made everything sound worse than it is. Elaine's already found her dress, and Lucas is renting a tux. It's a big night." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. On the table beside my bed lay 2 papers, the hospital's consent form and the thick cream envelope Elaine had dropped off weeks ago, embossed with gold lettering St. Agnes Medical Center, a celebration of leadership. I stared at the date printed in elegant script, Saturday, March 11th. That evening, Elaine called. "Honey, can you at least try to look presentable for photos? I can bring your makeup bag to the hospital if you want." "I won't be standing," I said quietly. She sighed, impatient. "Well, maybe we'll take a seated picture. It's important your father looks supported." Supported? That word twisted deeper than the pain itself. I folded the invitation in half and set it beside the consent form. 2 choices, side by side, one for survival, one for show. The next morning, I signed my name where the pen trembled, giving permission for the operation that couldn't wait for anyone's schedule. On Thursday morning, the hospital was already dressed for celebration. Banners congratulating the new executive lineup hung in the main corridor, the air thick with fresh flowers and polite anticipation. Somewhere in that same building, my name sat on a surgical schedule marked urgent. Dr. Vega attended the morning board planning meeting before scrubbing in for the day's operations. Gerald Kellerman sat 2 seats away, rehearsing the wording of his acceptance remarks with the public relations team. He didn't notice when Dr. Vega looked up from her notes. "Before we move on," she said evenly, "I have a critical patient surname Kellerman scheduled for a major procedure today. I assume there's no relation." He laughed lightly, not catching the steel beneath her tone. "My daughter likes to dramatize her medical issues. She's fine, nothing serious." Her pen stilled. "A 10-centimeter ovarian mass is serious," she said quietly. "You approved the surgical budget for cases like hers." He glanced at her, surprised by the firmness in her voice. "Doctor, with respect, I've reviewed the file. It's routine." Dr. Vega's jaw tightened, but she said nothing further. The rest of the meeting carried on: numbers, donations, speeches, all the language of prestige layered over silence. Later, as I lay in pre-op, I saw her again. The surgical team moved quietly around me, checking vitals, marking my abdomen. Dr. Vega approached, her mask hanging at her throat, her expression softer than before. "Hi, Nadia," she said. "I spoke with your father this morning." I swallowed hard. Did he sound worried? She hesitated, then shook her head. He sounded busy. The air monitor beeped slowly beside me. I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the seconds between each sound. Dr. Vega placed a hand over mine. "I want you to know my team is prepared. We'll take care of you. You have a family here, even if not up there." Her voice carried the calm certainty of someone who had seen too many people left alone. When the nurse injected the sedative, her hand was still there steady, grounding long after the rest of the world had started to blur. The operating room was a world without time. Its walls glowed white and cold, the only sound the hum of machines and the rhythm of masked voices moving in sync. The anesthesiologist's words faded into a gentle drift count backward from 10, and the last thing I saw was Dr. Vega's eyes above her mask, calm and sure. When I woke again, hours had vanished, but in another part of the same building, a different kind of performance was unfolding. While Dr. Vega guided the scalpel through layers of tissue, the ballroom upstairs was being polished for celebration. Caterers arranged silver trays. An event coordinator tested microphones. The PR assistant practiced introducing the hospital's new senior vice president, my father. Down here, in the chilled air of the surgical suite, Vega and her team fought for precision. The tumor was larger than imaging had shown, its edges curling dangerously close to vital arteries. "Clamp ready," she said quietly. Her assistants responded without hesitation. Sweat gathered along her temple beneath the surgical cap. 6 hours in, The room grew silent except for the steady beeping of the monitor. Vega paused, assessing the margins. "We can preserve the left ovary," she said at last, relief almost imperceptible in her voice. By the 7th hour, the tumor lay sealed in a stainless steel basin. The nurses moved efficiently, cleaning, counting sponges, stitching. Vega removed her gloves slowly, her hands trembling from exhaustion, eyes stinging from the harsh light. "Good work, everyone," she murmured, though no one spoke the kind of silence that only follows a narrow escape. Outside the OR, she leaned against the wall for a moment, breathing deeply. From somewhere above, faint music floated down through the ventilation system, the sound of the sound check for the gala. Laughter echoed in the corridor leading to the event center, a muffled rhythm of glasses clinking. Dr. Vega closed her eyes. In one building, a life had just been pulled back from the edge. In another, its father rehearsed his thank you speech. She removed her cap and walked toward the ICU, determined to make sure the patient whose name he'd brushed aside would never be invisible again. When I opened my eyes, the world returned in fragments: white ceiling tiles, the steady pulse of a monitor, the faint antiseptic scent that clung to everything. My throat burned from the breathing tube that had been there. I tried to speak, but only air came out. A nurse leaned over me, smiling softly. "You're in the ICU, sweetheart. Surgery went well. Just rest." But rest was impossible. Above the muffled hum of machines, another sound crept in: music. Soft at first, then unmistakable bass notes, laughter, the rhythm of clinking glasses. It drifted through the vents, 2 floors down from the ballroom. My father's gala had begun. The clock beside my bed read 8:42 p.m. The surgery had been 7 hours. My body felt both hollow and impossibly heavy, stitched together with pain. Every breath tugged against the incision in my abdomen. I closed my eyes and tried not to picture him smiling beneath the same roof. The door opened quietly. "Hey, you stubborn miracle!" a voice whispered. Kayla, my coworker and best friend, stepped inside with tear-bright eyes and a phone in her hand. "You scared the life out of us." I managed a weak smile. She hesitated before showing me the screen. It was a Facebook post: my father in a tuxedo, Elaine beside him in sequins, Lucas raising a champagne glass. The caption read, "Celebrating with my complete family." So blessed. Something inside me went still. Kayla bit her lip, her thumb trembling as she lowered the phone. "I'm sorry," she said. Dr. Vega appeared moments later, clipboard in hand, exhaustion written in every line of her face. She checked my vitals, then glanced at Kayla. At the phone still unlocked, the faint echo of music trembled through the ceiling again. Her jaw tightened. "He really posted that." I nodded. She didn't respond. For a moment, only the duet of sounds filled the room, the beeping that kept me alive and the bass that celebrated without me. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but certain. "Rest, Nadia. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. The rest of them will have to face where they are." The ballroom glowed like a cathedral of self-congratulation glass chandeliers, mirrored walls, the hum of polite laughter bouncing off silver cutlery. Gerald Kellerman stood center stage, his tuxedo immaculate, his smile rehearsed to perfection. The banner behind him read, "St. Agnes Medical Center, a legacy of care." He raised his glass toward the crowd of executives and donors. "At St. Agnes," he began, "we believe in family-first values, patients, staff, and loved ones working together in compassion." His voice carried smoothly across the room, trained from years of presentations. The applause came right on cue. Near the back of the ballroom, still in surgical scrubs, Dr. Marisol Vega stood beneath the soft wash of chandelier light. She hadn't planned to speak not like this, but as his words echoed through the microphone, something inside her broke past restraint. Is that why your daughter is recovering from cancer surgery 2 floors below while you're giving this speech?" The room went silent so suddenly it was almost holy. Gerald froze mid-sentence, the smile slipping from his face. Someone gasped. Phones rose discreetly, then not so discreetly, catching the moment in shaky frames of disbelief. He stammered, I think there's been some misunderstanding." Dr. Vega stepped forward, holding a sealed folder in her hand. "There isn't. Nadia Kellerman, your daughter, underwent a 7-hour surgery on Thursday to remove a malignant ovarian tumor. She's alive because my team acted quickly. I have her written consent to disclose this." She unfolded a signed document, her voice steady. The board chairman, seated at the head table, stood slowly. "Is this true?" Mr. Kellerman Gerald's throat worked soundlessly. "My daughter tends to exaggerate." He tried. Vega's voice cut through the murmurs. "Exaggeration doesn't require an operating room or chemotherapy." The applause never returned. The board chairman turned to the communications director. "Suspend the promotion. Initiate a full ethics review immediately." As security ushered the press out, Gerald's reflection wavered in the mirrored wall behind him, smiling in the photo still projected on the screen. Hollow in the flesh. Above the applause that never came again, the truth had spoken, and nothing in that room would sound the same after. Morning light filtered weakly through the hospital blinds, turning everything a pale shade of forgiveness I wasn't ready to offer. My phone buzzed on the tray beside me. "Dad." I hesitated before swiping to answer. His voice came sharp, the edge of humiliation still fresh. "Do you have any idea what you've done? They're suspending my promotion. The board's investigating. You told that woman our private business." I stared at the heart monitor, steady and calm in a way he never was. "I didn't tell her anything you didn't already say yourself. I've worked 15 years for this position." He snapped. 15 years. "Nadia. And you've destroyed it over a little surgery you recovered from just fine." Before I could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Dr. Vega stepped in, still in scrubs, her hair pulled into a messy knot, without a word. She pressed the speakerphone button on my device and set it on the bedside table. "Mr. Kellerman," she said evenly. "This is Dr. Marisol Vega. I'm here with your daughter." He went silent for a beat. "Doctor, this is a family matter." "This is a leadership matter," she countered. "Your behavior toward your daughter is documented in her medical records. Staff heard you dismiss her diagnosis as exaggeration. And your own words, spoken publicly at the gala, are now part of the hospital's investigation." The only sound for a moment was his breathing, sharp and uneven. Dr. Vega continued, her tone measured but unflinching. "Cancer isn't negotiable. Family support isn't optional. You oversee patient care policies, yet you failed the most basic principle, human empathy." I closed my eyes. She wasn't raising her voice, but the quiet in her words was heavier than anger. Finally, the line clicked. The call ended without a goodbye. Dr. Vega picked up the phone and set it aside. "You don't need to hear him anymore," she said softly. "He's not talking to heal. He's talking to defend what's already gone." The monitor beside me steadied again, its rhythm slow and sure, filling the silence he left behind. The investigation moved faster than anyone expected. Within weeks, the hospital's ethics board uncovered what Dr. Vega had suspected years of complaints buried under professionalism and fear. Nurses spoke of denied medical leave, of being told their conditions were poorly timed. One remembered Gerald laughing when she requested recovery days after a miscarriage. Another recalled him calling a cardiac patient's operation a scheduling inconvenience. Each report chipped away at the image he'd spent a lifetime building. The gala photos disappeared from the hospital's website. His office nameplate was quietly removed. The announcement came in a single internal email. Promotion rescinded, interim leadership to be appointed. By the end of the month, he was reassigned to administrative support. No meetings, no influence, no voice. 3 weeks later, he resigned. Elaine filed for divorce soon after. Her statement cited irreconcilable priorities. Lucas stopped answering his calls. I didn't attend any of the hearings. My world had narrowed to treatment rooms and the quiet rhythm of survival. Chemotherapy blurred time into cycles of nausea and hope. Kayla drove me to every appointment, sitting beside me with crossword puzzles she never finished. Dr. Vega checked my labs personally, her presence steady, protective without pity. On good days. I returned to my apartment and opened the drawer beside my bed. Inside was my hospital ID bracelet, the one I'd worn through the surgery. The plastic had faded, the letters of my name smudged, but it still felt alive in my hand, a small proof that truth had left a mark deeper than pain. By spring, the news of my father's fall had become background noise in a city that moved on quickly. For me, justice hadn't thundered in or demanded applause. It arrived quietly, like the hum of the machines that once kept me breathing. A year later, the scar had softened, the skin pale and smooth beneath my palm. I'd learned to live inside a body that once tried to collapse under its own weight. My hair was growing back in uneven curls, and the hospital that had nearly broken my family had become the place I built a new one. St. Agnes offered me a position as a patient advocacy coordinator, helping families navigate the same corridors where I once lay alone. I said yes without hesitation. On my first day, I passed the conference room where my father's portrait had once hung. The wall was empty now, freshly painted, waiting for something honest to replace it. That spring, Dr. Vega invited me to speak at a healthcare leadership summit. The ballroom was the same one where my father had delivered his speech, but the air felt different, lighter, unafraid. I stood behind the microphone, the lights warm against my face. Family neglect in healthcare doesn't start in policy, I said. It starts at home, with the small ways we dismiss pain because it inconveniences us. Compassion can't be practiced publicly if it's absent privately. The room was silent when I finished, then filled with applause that didn't sound like performance. It sounded like understanding. Afterward, Dr. Vega found me backstage, still in her lab coat, her smile quiet but proud. "You've turned survival into policy," she said. I smiled back. "You turned compassion into action." That night, I returned home and placed my old hospital bracelet inside my desk drawer beside my new ID badge. Plastic and metal, past and present, two proofs of life. Real family, I realized, doesn't pose for photos. It holds your hand when you can't lift your own. And it shows up, even when no one's watching.